Good morning. India has become the latest country to be added to the UK's travel red list, meaning anyone arriving from there has to quarantine in a government-approved hotel. The country now finds itself as the new epicentre of the global pandemic, with a record number of cases and deaths being recorded for a second day, and the discovery of a new variant. Milena Veselinovic has been meeting some of those affected by the latest travel ban.
These were the last passengers to land in the UK from India ahead of new travel restrictions, and the last to avoid paying for costly hotel quarantine. This family were back from seeing relatives in Delhi and were relieved they managed to change their tickets at the last minute.
At least we will be having our quarantine at home. That is the best part. And I'm having a child with autism, so it's better that he stays at home with us and can have all his food preferences at home.
How did you end up back in India?
But Jetal Zala, who's doing her master's in Scotland, was not so lucky. She's visiting family in India and couldn't get a flight back in time.
I tried calling the airlines, but I couldn't connect to them because definitely they were closed. Then I tried making an international calls. I started calling my friends who are already in the UK, but there was no changes. The flights were as it is, but it was really disturbing news for me. Like, I was really sad that I can't go back, and I don't know when I can enter the country.
Restrictions are disrupting businesses too. Restaurant owner Ranjit Mathrani says most of his highly trained Indian chefs went home during the UK lockdown, and now they're stuck, which could jeopardise his plans for reopening.
Here we are, after 5.5 months of lockdown, losing vast amounts of money, looking forward to limping back to normality in the first place, and we are going to be stuck with the probability and possibility of being unable to open, except probably on a very restricted basis in some of our key fine dining restaurants.
The UK has deep historical and cultural links with India, so putting it on the red list was a difficult decision, the government said. But some scientists think that it should have happened sooner because of a surge in cases in the country and a concerning new variant.
Over 130 cases of the Indian variant, which could be more resistant to vaccines, are already in the UK.
We've seen cases increasing in India for several weeks now, and it would have been prudent, I think, to have put India on the red list earlier. It's obviously a tough decision because there's a lot of communication travel between India and the UK, but I think it would have been the right thing to do a few weeks ago.
With India now the epicentre of the pandemic, it will likely be some time before these tough new restrictions can be eased. Milena Veselinovic, Sky News.
Well, the travel restrictions come into force as India faces rising numbers of COVID-19 cases and deaths. In the latest 24 hours, 332,730 people in India have been diagnosed with COVID-19. That's the highest daily rise in COVID cases anywhere in the world. 2,263 people have died in the last day, bringing the total number of deaths to nearly 187,000. Well, joining us from the government this morning is the Digital and Culture Minister, Caroline Dinenage. Good morning to you. I don't know if you saw all of that report that we ran there, but we heard from Professor of Virology at University of Leeds saying that there should have been the decision taken to put India on the red list weeks ago. Would you agree that really this should have happened weeks ago? It's too little, too late.
No, because, we do keep this under review all the time. We appreciate that people have to travel for business, and that there are huge links between ourselves and India. The situation in India has worsened incredibly, an incredible amount over the last few days. As you say, the figures, 330,000 cases in the last day is one of the highest in the world, and that's why we took steps to add them to the red list. It obviously takes a couple of days for that to kick in, for the operations to take effect.
Forgive me, but the professor was saying clearly there that this should have happened weeks ago.
Well, we take advice from the health experts on this. We don't really want to add countries to the red list unnecessarily, but the priority is absolutely to protect people in the UK. We've worked so hard over the course of this pandemic. The lockdowns have been so tough for so many people that we don't want to take these steps, but we will take them if necessary. There are now, I think, 40 countries on the red list, which shows our commitment to keeping this country safe.
And the delay had nothing to do with the Prime Minister's trade visit to India?
Well, the Prime Minister didn't go to India, did he?
No, I know, but he cancelled the trip to India latterly, last-minute cancellation.
No, I mean, it's all kept under review by public health experts. They look at the rise of cases. We're confident that the vaccines we have will deal with this variant. We haven't got any proof that they don't, but we've just still got to err on the side of caution and take these steps when they're necessary to do it.
You'll appreciate that people will be very worried, especially as the variant seems to be in this country now. Does the government know how many planes and passengers landed from India this week?
I don't know that. I'm a culture minister, but there will be a record of that, and of course we have one of the most some of the toughest measures in place on our borders in the world with the a 3-part testing system and all the home quarantining that's necessary, and of course the hotel quarantine as well now for those that are coming back from India to who live here. So this is all just part of the huge efforts that we've been putting in place right across this period to really make sure that people are kept safe and that we keep these variants out of the UK.
I just want to ask you about the Greensill affair. We know that David Cameron personally lobbied the Treasury's most senior civil servant emails to the Bank of England. We now hear this morning. Is it right that a former Prime Minister should take advantage of his position to secure financial gain for the company that he was working for?
Obviously, this is of concern. The Prime Minister has commissioned an independent review to look at the supply chain finance, how contracts were secured, how business representatives engaged with government, and it will look at a whole range of issues. It's going to have maximum possible access to all the information that we need, and will engage with all those involved at the time when decisions were made. The review's underway, so I don't really want to preempt its findings.
Do you feel comfortable, though, with a former Prime Minister taking advantage of his previous role in this way? Are you comfortable with it personally?
Well, I mean, so far, we don't see any evidence that that rules have been broken. But that's why this independent review has been commissioned by the Prime Minister to look into this very carefully, because clearly that would be of huge concern. Nigel Boardman's leading this review. It's going to conclude by the end of June, and I don't want to preempt its findings, but we're going to look very, very carefully at this.
But are you uncomfortable with the whole situation?
Well, there are very strict rules that govern ex-ministers, including ex-prime ministers, and the rules that need to be followed, and we just need to make sure that there hasn't been any breach of those.
Kwesi Kwarteng said on this show yesterday that he gets calls from businesses and constituents all the time, and it's perfectly normal. Can you tell us who has access to your personal mobile?
Well, I can't off the top of my head. I'd have to look at my mobile phone. It's not something one tends to give out willy-nilly. But we do as ministers, we meet business people. In my line of work, clearly, I meet lots of people in the digital world. I'm Minister for Digital and Culture, so those are the two areas where I would meet an awful lot of people. But also, charities, trade unions, other bodies, so we meet people all the time. But we are very clear.
It's all above board, according to you. Do you have a record of this at all? Are records kept?
Yeah, I mean, I don't tend to massively interact with people via text message, but there are very clear rules about what happens if you do ever get approached. You pass it on to your private office, and everything goes through the normal civil service channels. We don't do business via WhatsApp or text message.
And also another story this morning is how leaky Downing Street is. Dominic Cummings being blamed for various leaks by the Prime Minister. What's your view on that? Do you believe that he was responsible?
I've absolutely no idea. I know that the Cabinet Office are looking into a leak inquiry at the moment, but I know that you wouldn't expect me to comment on that.
Well, I wouldn't have asked if I didn't expect you to comment. Let's move on to UEFA not letting countries host Euro 21 matches if they can't guarantee 25% of capacity, which means matches will fall to other stadia. Are you ready? Are we prepared to take on those extra matches?
Yeah, we've been working really hard. As you know, we've been running a series of pilots. They include a whole number of footballing pilots. In fact, the Carabao Cup final this weekend, Man City v Spurs, will see 8,000 people at Wembley, and it's all about making sure that we are ready, that we've looked at the risks and indeed the mitigations for those risks when the time comes for the next stage of the roadmap to reopen.
And just staying with football, we know that Ed Woodward, Executive Vice Chairman of Manchester United, held a formal meeting with number 10 Chief of Staff on Wednesday, just before the whole debacle with the European Super League, before it was launched. He then met the Prime Minister on his way out. Can you tell us if the Super League was discussed?
Well, according to both sides, the EPL was not discussed. Of course, it does seem remarkable that he didn't think to mention it before the bombshell was dropped over the weekend, and I think to me that probably explains the reaction from the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State, who were clearly really shocked and horrified as the announcement came out over Sunday. I was in the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport on Monday morning, and there was a palpable sense of dismay about how fans' views had been just ridden over for this decision, and a real determination to make sure that this wouldn't happen.
On the 7 million being announced for British film, we know that films cost tens of millions of pounds, if not more. It doesn't seem an awful lot.
Well, it's a pilot. I mean, we have. If you look, we got the Oscars this weekend, and there's once again a huge raft of great British talent, both in front of and behind the camera, who are up for awards. And so we know that we punch above our weight on this on a global scale. This money is a pilot. It's supporting independent UK film and screen to export to markets around the world. It's about helping them with business development and co-production and international distribution, and really about bringing further recognition to world-renowned British film industry. It's a massive contributor, the creative industries, to our British economy, and we know that it can do more, and we want to see it flourish. And that's why we've, despite the pressures of a global pandemic and the pressures on finances, we've managed to secure this 7 million fund to invest in our TV and screen and film industries, to really see what more we can do to help them reach out to a wider global audience. We know that there's huge appetite for the British storytelling here in the UK.
Caroline Dinenage, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, our political correspondent Kate McCann was listening, as ever, to that interview. What did you make of what she had to say? Just wouldn't admit that perhaps India should have been put on the red list a lot sooner.
I think that's difficult. I mean, there is a process behind these decisions, and they do tend to have a buffer period, if you like, so that people can make arrangements. But clearly the numbers of cases in that country at the moment are of a concern, and so is the variant, which the government is investigating, as are others around the world. But I think it was the exchanges on Greensill and government lobbying that really struck me in that conversation, because you asked twice, actually, whether Caroline Dinenage was comfortable with how this is happening at the moment, and she just couldn't say yes to you. In fact, she said, there are really strict rules, and it would be of concern if they hadn't been followed. That would be a problem. She said two other things, though, that really struck me in that conversation. She said her number isn't something she tends to give out willy-nilly. Now, of course, over the last week, that's something that the Prime Minister has been accused of doing, giving it out to businesses and allowing people to contact him. And she also said that if people do text her in her role as a minister, she passes those communications on to civil servants, because those are the rules. We know that's not what happened in the case of James Dyson and Boris Johnson, and that's why we're still talking about this issue. Number 10 clearly suggesting that these texts have been leaked by Dominic Cummings that he's bitter about his time in Number 10, but actually the heart of this is all about access to senior members of the government, and clearly some government ministers don't think it's right.
Yes, interesting, and we shall see the results of the various inquiries that are ongoing. Kate, thank you. Still to come on the show, delivering justice at 7:30. We'll speak to one of the sub-postmasters waiting to hear if their convictions for stealing money will be quashed after the Post Office IT scandal. The Welsh First Minister Mark Draper joins us at 7:45 to discuss plans to ease the lockdown in Wales. And at 8:20, we'll chat with one of the MPs who took part in an historic vote last night, classing China's treatment of the Uyghur people as genocide. Some breaking news to bring you now, and government borrowing hit 303.1 billion in the year ending March, which is the same as 14.5% of gross domestic product. It's the highest level since the end of the Second World War, according to the Office for National Statistics. Now let's take a look at some of the other news for you this morning. Two major studies of more than 370,000 people show vaccines should be able to help control the COVID-19 pandemic. The study suggests a single dose of either the Pfizer or BioNTech or Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines can reduce the risk of getting coronavirus by 65%. The businessman Bill Gates has told Sky News the world didn't prepare for this pandemic nearly like we should have done, but that vaccines will help us get back to some normality. Speaking to Sky's Jane Secker, the Microsoft co-founder said that global cooperation had been boosted by Western nations coming together to share resources.
Well, as the pandemic struck a little over a year ago, there was a realization that this was a global problem and that we needed to orchestrate resources on a global basis. And so, particularly the UK, France, and Germany came together with other actors like the WHO and our foundation and said, okay, what are the vehicles we can use? CEPI was there to do vaccine research, Gavi to buy vaccines, Global Fund for therapeutics, including oxygen. And that's what ACT-A is. It's taking all of that additional resources and coordinating it on a global basis. And so it was super valuable that we did that. Of course, because we didn't prepare for this pandemic nearly like we should have, we've been learning as we've been going. But, I'd say the good news is that partly because of the ACT-A efforts, partly because of US R&D money, we have the vaccines and we can see the end will come for this pandemic.
And you can watch the full interview with Bill Gates this Sunday on Sophie Ridge on Sunday. Jane Secker will be sitting in for Sophie this week. The government will consider plans to give football fans in England a greater say into how their clubs are run. An official review will also examine whether the existing tests for new club owners and directors are fit for purpose. The Sky's Jemima Walker joins us now from the newsroom. Morning to you, Jemima. So exactly what sort of detail do we have at the moment?
Well, this is actually a very wide-ranging review, and it will look at three main areas: the financial sustainability of football clubs, the structure of ownerships, and crucially, the fan experience. Now, the Conservative MP Tracy Crouch is leading this review, and she has said it will take the necessary steps to retain the game's integrity, competitiveness, and most importantly, the bond that clubs have with its supporters and the local community. Now, this review comes in the wake of the European Super League debacle, whereby the big six English clubs announced they would join this league, whereby they could not be relegated. And that, of course, caused uproar from politicians, from Prince William, and not least the fans. And I think one of the really interesting things that it revealed was this chasm, really, between the priorities of the fans and the priorities of the often foreign ownership. And because of this review will look at the German Bundesliga model, whereby clubs cannot compete unless they are majority fan-owned. This is an idea that the government is clearly very keen on. Boris Johnson mentioned it in Prime Minister's questions this week, but I think there are real significant question marks about how exactly it could be implemented. This review has been brought forward, and I think politically it's a very important review for the government to signal to fans that this is something that we care about. The government have released a statement this morning saying that football is in our national DNA, but it is clear that we need to closely look at its future.
Thank you. The UK could host more Euro 2020 football matches this summer if other host cities can't guarantee allowing fans into the games. UEFA will this morning discuss rescheduling some matches if cities like Bilbao and Dublin can't allow fans into grounds and observe social distancing. Rescuers in Indonesia are searching for a submarine that disappeared 2 days ago with 53 crew members on board. Our Southeast Asia correspondent Siobhan Robbins joins me now. Siobhan, bring us up to date with what has happened and where we are now.
This is such a tense moment in the search for this submarine because there are now only around 12 hours of oxygen left for the 53 crewmen on board that submarine. The submarine disappeared on Wednesday morning. It was taking part in this training exercise off the island of Bali. It asked for permission to dive. It was given permission to dive. And then from that point, communication was lost. And since then, there's been this huge effort to try and locate what has happened to it and where it is. So planes were sent up as well as ships sent out to look for it. And some of the spotter planes quickly found oil slicks on the water. It's possible that is linked to the submarine. So much of the searching has been carried out in that area around 60 miles off the coast of Bali. And there's been assistance from other countries including Singapore, Malaysia, the US, Australia, India, all offering to support this huge search and rescue effort, which is now including more than 24 vessels, as well as these spotter planes, ships as well, equipped with sonar to try and locate this submarine. But there are real concerns about the safety of those on board, not just for the fact that the oxygen's running out, but also that they haven't been heard from. There has been no sign at all of it since it disappeared on Wednesday. Now, what has been located is this area of high magnetism below the surface, which is one of the areas that they're focusing on, in the hope that that could be coming from the submarine, and then hopefully they can try and rescue those on board. The other big risk for those who are stuck on that submarine is if it has sunk too deep, because if it sinks below around 600, 700 metres, then the water pressure, it's warned, may simply become too strong, essentially, for the outside of that submarine to withstand, so it could then break up. So a really, really difficult time for the family and friends of the 53 on board who are waiting for news.
Indeed, very tense situation there. Siobhan, for the moment, thank you. US Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg has said investigators are still gathering information about a fatal car crash on Saturday in Texas involving a Tesla, in which local police say no one was in the driver's seat. There is growing scrutiny over Tesla's autopilot system, which handles tasks allowing drivers to temporarily take their hands off the wheel. Tesla says the feature requires active driver supervision. But the US magazine Consumer Reports says it's been able to operate vehicles without anyone in the driver's seat. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have marked Prince Louis's 3rd birthday by releasing a photograph of their son pictured on his first day of nursery school. Louis, who is 5th in line to the throne, was pictured by his mum as he rode his bike. Happy birthday to him. Time now for a look at the weather with Jo. Good morning to you. You're going to be bringing us sunshine, aren't you?
I am indeed. In fact, it's St George's Day, and it was 1984 that the record sunshine was set, 13.9 hours. We had 13.8 yesterday at Ronald's Way. We could well break that record today. We'll just have to wait and see. Let's take a look at the weather details.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Hello there. Good morning to you. We can thank high pressure for the wonderful weather that we're having at the moment, but that high pressure is also forcing this storm system in towards Spain and Portugal, and they're looking at a grim few days with some very wet and windy weather. For us, it's quite breezy associated with that storm over parts of the southwest, also through Channel Coast, southernmost counties. So feeling a little bit cooler here, but elsewhere, plenty of sunshine to come and temperatures 16 to 19 degrees Celsius. That's 66 degrees Fahrenheit. To feel very pleasant out of the wind, and to avoid the winds, stay away from the coasts because the onshore breezes will make it cooler there. Through the course of the day, more in the way of cloud over parts of Scotland. Very small risk of an isolated shower, but most places staying dry. Into this evening and overnight as well. The big difference with tomorrow is we've got some misty, murky low cloud up towards the northeast, which will take a while to burn back.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Still to come on Sky News Breakfast, we'll be meeting one of several sub-postmasters waiting to hear if her conviction for stealing money will be quashed after the Post Office IT scandal. Welcome back. The government is facing further lobbying allegations following revelations that former Prime Minister David Cameron contacted the Treasury and Bank of England on behalf of the finance firm Greensill. It comes as Boris Johnson faces fresh criticism for texts to the businessman Sir James Dyson. Well, earlier I asked Digital and Culture Minister Caroline Dinenage if it was too easy for big business to access top government officials.
We do, as ministers, we meet business people. In my line of work, clearly, I meet lots of people in the digital world. I'm Minister for Digital and Culture, so those are the two areas where I would meet an awful lot of people. But also, charities, trade unions, other bodies. So we meet people all the time. I mean, I don't tend to massively interact with people via text message, but there are very clear rules about what happens if you do ever get approached. You pass it on to your private office, and everything goes through the normal civil service channels. We don't do business via WhatsApp or text message.
Caroline Dinenage there. A group of 42 sub-postmasters and postmistresses will learn later today whether their convictions for stealing money will be quashed amid a post office IT scandal. They were imprisoned after the post office installed the flawed Horizon computer system. Some have now died and will never be able to clear their names. One of the former post office workers fighting to clear her name is Seema Misra, and she joins me now. Good morning to you. Now, you're actually in the car about to head off to get to court this morning. How are you feeling?
I'm basically all feeling. I'm nervous and looking forward as well.
But nervous. Why nervous?
Yeah, because going to court, I went to court in 2010 to get justice. That didn't happen. Fingers crossed today, we will get justice.
Tell us a bit of the backstory. What actually happened to you when you were working in your role for the post office? What happened?
Well, there were money missing from the system, and I've been told I have to make sure the tills are correct. So I have to put money from my own shop floor to borrow money from the friends and family. Keep on putting the money in, but never got any money back. And then they accused me of stealing money. Went to the court that, hopefully I will get justice, but that didn't happen in 2010.
And this was a new IT system that was brought in that you had to utilise, which you did raise concerns over because, as you say, that the books weren't balancing. You were short on a daily basis.
True. From the day one, I was screaming for help, but there was no support.
And you were advised to balance the books that you had to use your own personal money.
True.
So, I mean, to what extent, how much did you have to put in to try and cover what you thought was an error?
Oh, my God. Every day to start with, it was under £100. Then I went on the individual till. It was going around about 100. And it came to the point when I stopped even counting the money. I was just like, from the shop floor, whatever we needed next day for the shop running, that was going into the bank. Rest, without even counting, I was just putting it in the post office.
And because of your concern that this simply wasn't right, you actually yourself called in the auditors who came in, couldn't find the flaw, but said that definitely there was a shortage and you might be suspended because of that.
True. They said, Mrs. Mishra, we have so many post office. They're doing fine. It's just your post office having an issue with. Anytime you're over £500 short, we'll take the post office away.
And then take us to that point, to you actually being convicted.
God, I was pregnant as well. And that was I still hope this is just like a bad dream. I wake up and nothing like that happened, but it's here now. I was pregnant. I was sentenced to 15 months. That was the worst time of my life.
I can't imagine what that must have felt like, being 8 months pregnant, being sentenced to a jail term for 15 months. How did you feel? I mean, what appeals did you put out for help?
I was 8 weeks pregnant. I was eight weeks pregnant,
8 weeks.
Not 8 months. Yeah, I was 8 weeks pregnant. It was nothing. I thought, that's it. That's the end of it. Luckily, if I would have been pregnant, I would have killed myself. That's for sure.
It got that bad?
Yeah. I was so scared of a baby health that, anything can happen. I lost my faith.
And it must have had a terrible impact, obviously not only on yourself, but the rest of your family.
True, yeah. Whole family suffered. My eldest son, husband, everybody.
And what
emotionally, physically.
Yes, you were saying emotionally and physically, and also it's been difficult for you to find future work.
Yeah, it's been nearly 10 years I'm unable to work. I applied so many places. I applied to be an Uber driver that was refused because of my conviction.
So, what are you hoping for today?
Hoping to get justice. It's going to be long delayed, but at least it will get justice.
And the best result for you would mean what?
Best result for me, conviction like overturn on limb 1 and limb 2.
And you've been fighting to clear your name, obviously, so that you can work. That really is the main issue for you, that you can earn a livelihood and not be prevented from doing that because of this hanging over you.
And my dignity as well. It's been like I haven't been like hiding myself. Because of the conviction I've overhanging over my head. I couldn't even travel. Everything. It means a lot.
It has been described as one of the UK's biggest miscarriages of justice. Would you agree with that? Because obviously this is your case we're talking about, but there are others in similar situations. Some of them no longer with us.
True, definitely. This is the biggest. I still don't believe this is happening, and how they get it done by this so many years. And
what would you want to say to the post office today?
I hope they learn from it. But they have to make sure that nothing like this happen again. It's all was in their control, still in their control as well.
Seema Misra, thank you so much for speaking to us. Safe journey, and we hope the outcome is as you would wish. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Now, with under 2 weeks to go until polling day, canvassing for the local elections is in full swing. But the pandemic has made parties' usual ground game far more difficult, which could lead to an uncertain outcome at the ballot box. Kate McCann reports on a very different year on the campaign trail.
It's great to be out campaigning again.
Local elections can be an important yardstick to know how political parties are doing more generally. But this year, campaigners have missed out on vital weeks of knocking on doors to persuade voters to back them.
Because we've not been able to go door knocking because of the lockdown, we've been doing a lot more telephoning, but of course you don't have every voter's telephone number, and a lot more online as well, so people may have seen things popping up on Facebook, and those are better than nothing, but really there's nothing that can replace the personal interaction between a candidate and a voter. That's what tells the candidate what really matters and what they need to focus on.
Those lost weeks have made it much harder for politicians to know who will cross which box on the day.
This is the reality of campaigning in a pandemic. Instead of working from a village hall, campaigners are working out of the backs of cars. The leaflets are stacked up and handed out, and everything is socially distanced. The pandemic has been really unpredictable, and it's made these local elections unpredictable too.
So obviously at the beginning everyone was slightly nervous about knocking on doors, not knowing how everyone would feel, but actually I think everyone's quite keen to have a chat.
The pandemic has seen communities come together, and those independent groups have realised they can run things pretty well themselves. Now many are standing for office, adding another element of uncertainty for established parties.
We have seen kind of a number of different independent groups, but we are seeing those independent groups popping up across the country, and it will make it more complicated because, as I say, these are very local elections. It's down to ward and division, and you start to split votes in different directions. It makes it really, really unpredictable.
Others are more positive about their prospects, but still concede campaigning this time around hasn't felt the same.
People are really pleased to see us. I think in some cases we may be the first people they've seen this year since they last played for a delivery driver. So we've made their life slightly more interesting.
And in terms of how you've been able to run this campaign, I mean,
people who are involved in politics will know that a big part of campaigning is the social aspect, and you
yes.
guys have lost that. I mean, how does that feel this time?
Well, it would be nice occasionally to get to the pub after a canvassing session, or indeed even to go out in a gaggle.
Local elections, while not always the most exciting political moment, are really important. This time around, normal rules are out of the window and campaigners are preparing for surprises in a few weeks' time. Kate McCann, Sky News.
Time to take a look now at the day's sport with Jackie.
This sports bulletin is brought to you by Vitality, committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
6 Premier League clubs have agreed to be part of a plan for a new European Super League. There's already enormous opposition to the plan, with UEFA and the Premier League threatening bans for clubs and players. Manchester United, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham and Manchester City are the clubs involved, while Barcelona, Juventus and Real Madrid are also understood to be on board. Well, the news has been broken on the eve of the planned UEFA announcement for a revamped Champions League. Well, today's developments provoked a furious response from our very own Gary Neville. Have a listen to this.
I mean, I'm a Manchester United fan and have been for 40 years of my life, but I'm disgusted, absolutely disgusted. I'm disgusted with Manchester United and Liverpool most. I mean, Liverpool, they pretend, you'll never walk alone, the people's club, the fans' club. Manchester United, 100 years, born out of workers around here. And they're breaking away into a league without competition that they can't be relegated from. It's an absolute disgrace. And honestly, we have to wrestle back the power in this country from the clubs at the top of this league, and that includes my club. And I've been calling for 12 months as part of another group for an independent regulator to bring checks and balances in place to stop this happening. It's pure greed. They're imposters. They're imposters. They're nothing to do. The owners of this club, the owners of Liverpool, the owners of Chelsea, the owners of Manchester City, they're nothing to do with football in this country. There are 100-odd years of history in this country from fans that have lived and loved these clubs. And they need protecting. The fans need protecting. I benefited from football hugely. I've made money out of football. I invest money into a football club. Now, I'm not against money in football, but the principles and ethos of fair competition and the rights to play the game so that Leicester win the league, they go into the Champions League. Manchester United aren't even in the Champions League. Arsenal aren't even in the Champions League. You watched them earlier on today. They're an absolute shambles of a football club at the moment. Tottenham aren't in the Champions League, and they want a God-given right to be in there. They're an absolute joke. And honestly, the time has come now. Independent regulators, stop these clubs having the power base. Enough is enough.
Let's be clear about this. What is the motivation?
Committed to getting 100 million people 20% more active by 2025.
Still to come on Sky News Breakfast, I'll hear from the Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford, about why further relaxations to the country's COVID restrictions will be brought forward by 2 weeks.
There are things we all take for granted. As the rivers and tides flow, the sun will rise, the wind will blow, and the earth will spin. But are we now spiralling into a climate crisis which cannot be avoided?
No one can predict the impact that it's going to have.
Close to the peak here.
This is really the moment of truth. Expected to be hit very hard indeed.
What can be done to reverse the spiral? The Daily Climate Show on Sky News will look for the answers.
And we are desperate to welcome you this summer. So I think, yes, I think we will be ready here in Spain. And we also think that things on vaccination scheme on the UK are going pretty well. So hopefully we'll be seeing this summer the restart of holidays. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been trying to put in place different means to help a safe tourism. It is true that we've passed through some waves of this pandemic, this virus, But now I think we are ready because we do have vaccination. Vaccination have changed a huge deal from what we had last summer. So I believe that once we reach to a mutual agreement, and I have to say that we've been having constant conversations with UK authorities, this certificate is going to give us and it's going to ease the travelers and help tourism from this summer on. It is true that safe tourism is key in this matter. We want tourists to reach to Spain with all the guarantees, with all the means of safety. So we could be thinking on a corridor. Spain is pushing hard on the European Commission in terms of reaching agreements not only between member states, but also with third countries, third parties, such as the UK. We all believe, not only Spain, other countries, we all believe that the UK has to have proper treatment and agreement and mutual recognition with us, with European members. So we believe that if we reach these kind of agreements from the month of June, we will be able to have a summer, probably not as the one we had in 2019, but obviously the restart of tourism again.
Does anyone know which particular parts of your body can be damaged by air pollution?
The fine weather is going to stay with us right the way through the weekend. This morning it's another cold and frosty start. Light winds for many, but it is breezy down towards the southwest, and we'll see gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour through the course of the day. Temperatures in the mid-teens, peaking at around 18, possibly 19 degrees Celsius. That will be 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And air pollution is generally low, but we could find one or two pockets of moderate levels, particularly over central and southern parts of Scotland.
The Air Quality Report, sponsored by Philips Air Purifiers.
The Welsh Government has confirmed it will bring forward further relaxation to coronavirus restrictions 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Wales will now move to alert level 3 by Monday, the 3rd of May, meaning indoor activities for up to 15 adults will be allowed. Well, joining me now is the Welsh First Minister, Mark Drakeford. Good morning to you. Just run us through what people will be allowed to do.
Resume some indoor activities. Indoor organised activities for children, indoor activities for up to 15 adults. We'll be able to resume. We'll reopen the rest of the tourism industry, and we'll be able to allow a larger number of people to meet outdoors and indoors, always provided, that the current good state of the coronavirus outbreak in Wales is maintained and we have the headroom to go on easing those restrictions.
Why do you think that now is the right time? Why have you brought this forward by 2 weeks?
Well, we review our regulations every 3 weeks, and we've had that 3-week cycle for 12 months now. So I am reporting at the end of the current 3-week cycle. The numbers of people suffering from coronavirus in Wales continues to fall. We have the lowest incidence of coronavirus anywhere in the United Kingdom. And our vaccination programme continues to go from strength to strength. We've got the highest number of people vaccinated in Wales of any part of the United Kingdom. All of that has created some extra headroom for us to be able to bring forward some of the easing of the restrictions that we anticipated 3 weeks ago. Our Chief Medical Officer and our Chief Scientific Advisors have given us the go-ahead to move those things forward, and that's what I'll be announcing today.
Have you seen any incident of the Indian variant? And if so, what is specifically being done to counter that?
We do have examples of the Indian variant here in Wales. It's a relatively small number, and all of them are very carefully monitored by our local public health teams. We don't think that there is any reason for us to be alarmed at the current number that we are aware of. Of course, every day we review the situation because there may be people who have returned to the United Kingdom more recently. And if they come from India, there will be a chance they have the Indian variant. So the very careful work that our local public health teams do in keeping on top of the situation in Wales, that is what is allowing us to take the steps we're taking today. But I will be saying to people in Wales that, of course, coronavirus is not over. Those new variants that are appearing in other parts of the world need very careful watching. And we will continue in Wales to do things in a step-by-step way, with caution our watchword, never going beyond what the science tells us it is safe to do in lifting restrictions.
Of course, it's a sensitive time with the elections. During an election period, do you think it's appropriate that you should be making these announcements rather than the public health bodies?
Well, it's right for me to do it because I am the First Minister and I go on being the First Minister during the election period. I am responsible for the decisions that the Welsh Government makes. And it's right, I think, that I am answerable for those decisions. And today I'll be holding our normal press conference. The coronavirus pandemic doesn't know there's an election on. I will be there as the First Minister answering questions, explaining what we are doing, and I'll continue to do that until there is an election and the people of Wales make their decision about who they would like to be in government beyond it.
Do you understand the criticism, though, that's been levelled against you, that it gives you perhaps an unfair advantage?
Well, I'm sure of this, that if I had to be announcing more difficult news today, opposition parties would be demanding that I was there making that announcement. I make the announcement every 3 weeks. I've had to do it on some very difficult days when the news has not been good. I've made it at the end of 3 weeks when the news has been better. And today I simply return to the podium as I have every 3 weeks to let people in Wales know the assessment of the current state of the virus in Wales, the decisions we're able to make on their behalf, or assessment of what can happen in the future, and to remind people in Wales that coronavirus is by no means over.
Mark Drakeford, First Minister of Wales, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Time now to take a look at the weather for you. Joe is back, still smiling, so I'm sure it's still... the sun will be shining.
It is indeed. High pressure is going to keep things very nicely settled over the next few days. Plenty more sunshine to come. And then it gets a little less settled next week. But let's take a look at the details.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
We've seen a very dry April so far, and as we approach the end of it, there's not a lot of change in sight. So high pressure keeping things beautifully dry, clear, a little bit chilly at night. We're still seeing frosts this morning, no exception. A little bit of mist and fog as well over the Western Isles, but in essence, we're looking at another lovely day. Temperatures reaching around 17 to 19 degrees Celsius. That's a high of 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Very pleasant inland, but down towards the southwest, it will be quite windy. So feeling colder in that wind. It'll also feel a bit colder along coastal areas where we have sea breezes.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.